All right, good afternoon, everyone. I wasn't sure we were on the air there for a second. I kind of had a temporary lapse there, like the Red Wings, I guess, have had. This is the Red and White Authority, episode number 8. I'm Art Regner, along with Kevin Allen, and we are talking, we're really going to talk about the Red Wings. Kind of a disturbing game last night as they lose in overtime by a score of 5-4 to the lowly Phoenix Coyotes. Phoenix winless in their previous 8 games. They were 0-7-1 coming into the Joe on Tuesday night. Took a lead, and the Red Wings fought back. They were down 4 times, and they came back. Unfortunately, when you fall behind in overtime, you actually lose the game, and that's exactly what happened to the Red Wings. Kevin, I don't really know where to begin, because if you were looking at this schedule, and we went through it in the last show, and I know we're going to go through it in ease, if you look at the Red Wings schedule, except now, from here on out, besides Arizona, which you thought would be at least 2 points, besides playing Carolina in the last week of the season, the Red Wings schedule, they're playing some pretty heavy-hitting teams that are all either trying to solidify their place in the playoff standings, meaning they want to finish either 1 or 2 in their division to at least get home ice, or they're still fighting for their playoff lives. I mean, last night's game was rather disturbing.
Well, there's no question. I remember when I was in college and working for the Eastern Echo at Eastern Michigan University, we had the old-style Associated Press machine where the news of the day would unfold, and it would come out and it would be printed on a linotype machine, and it would go. But there was a bell system, and it was either 1 bell for normal news, 2 bells for, hey, you better run back and look at it, 3 bells for, oh, my God, and 4 bells like, oh, this is going to be front page news. And
Right.
We never heard a 5-bell story, but when you heard 5 bell, we assumed that was the end of the world news. And I think the Red Wings are in a 3 or 4 bell situation here. I watched that game last night, and this is a game the Red Wings needed to win. The Ottawa Senators are coming up hard on the rail. Other than the New York Rangers, nobody had been better than the Ottawa Senators. The Boston Bruins have shown that they can be the Boston Bruins again. So the Red Wings are now being chased. At one point, they had like a 12-point lead, and it's really dissipated. And then they play a team that has nothing to play for. As you mentioned, had been winless in 8, and had just struggled to score goals. This is a team that's traded away Keith Yandel, who was their best offensive weapon. Vermette is in Chicago now. He was their best offensive player. Mihailik, an important defenseman, is gone. Basically they threw in the towel. They're in the sweepstakes for McDavid or Eichel. And then the Red Wings came in, and as you mentioned, I'm going to sound like Mike Babcock, but there were some good things. The Red Wings did fight back. The effort was there. But, Jimmy Howard, it was not a strong performance by him, a weak performance by him in a game they needed to have. And, again, defensively, I looked at that, and they lost Cronwell right before the game, and, he's an important part of their defense. But, after that game, I went and I looked up, and the Red Wings are now 15th in 5-on-5 scoring. They are 17th now in penalty killing, which was a strength earlier in the season. They're 15th in goals against in the league. And when you add, and then their save percentage, their team save percentage is down to .909, which is below average. I think it's 17th or 18th in the NHL. And when you look at all those statistics, what it says to you is the Red Wings are an average team. And I don't think any of us believe they are an average team. This is a skillful team with good young players. I know last night, if anyone who was watching the telecast, they pointed out the Red Wings, if you count Eric Cole, who's scored 20 goals with 2 teams, the only team in the NHL with 5 20-goal scorers. They're really not playing up to their ability. They haven't now for a couple of weeks. Jimmy Howard looked like he was going to be right again after 2 strong performances, but he certainly had to take blame for what happened in that game last night. That was simply. It wasn't only his fault, but he certainly couldn't be happy with the way he played last night.
Kevin, I know a lot of Red Wing fans are sitting out there saying, okay, geniuses, then what happened? Why is this team underperforming, and why are they underachieving? Is it because Howard's injury came at the wrong time? But then again, Peter Mrazek stepped right in and didn't seem to miss the beat. And when Jonas Gustafsson plays for the Red Wings, he hasn't played poorly at all. So you can't really, and obviously everybody is hounding for Jimmy's job or wanting Mrazek to be in the net Thursday night against San Jose, and that's pretty common. We knew that was going to happen. But is it, Datsuk? It's getting close to playoff time. Pavel Datsuk has to be hurt.
Yeah.
It seems to happen every year. Zetterberg keeps saying we're doing a lot of good things, and people are saying, well, you're doing a lot of good things. Maybe you shouldn't be doing things so well, and maybe you'll start winning games again. I mean, what can you place a finger on why it seems to, as a collective, this team has been subpar for far too long?
Well, I think, and I've mentioned it in the last two programs, but I think it's still true, and it was really evident last night. I think when this team is its strongest is when they realize that it all has to start with strong defensive play. When they start to take chances, when they don't, clean up their own end first, is when they get in trouble. I mean, there's really no excuse for how sloppy I thought they were, last night. That their coverage in the Western Conference with the against Western Conference teams or Eastern Conference teams has to be more effective than it's been. And this is a tight checking league now, and the Red Wings are not playing like that. They're giving up too many quality chances, and guys are finding the seams in defense. They played really, really well. They played the kind of hockey they needed to play defensively at the start of the season. I think the guys realized that fans in Detroit were unhappy that the Red Wings didn't go out and get a premium defenseman in the off season. They wanted to prove that they could do the job, and they did. And on their long road trip where right before all this slump started, when they went and performed really well, I thought they were very strong defensively. When the Red Wings are playing well, it feels like that it's going to be hard to get a goal. Like right now, when you're watching the Red Wings, it feels like it's easy to get a goal. That there are too many openings to the play of the defensive, and I'm not talking just about the defense, but also the forwards coming back. It's just too sloppy. The penalty killing has been a problem after it was so effective early on. And, goaltending plays a role in that, certainly, and a large role in it. But, to me, if the Red Wings just, made a commitment to saying, okay, we're going to try to win games 2-1, I think the goals would be there. I mean, they're still ranked 9th in the NHL in goal scoring, and the average goals per game. They're scoring some goals, but they're just too sloppy defensively. And I think if there was more of a commitment to playing strong defense, I think the goals would still be there because they were scoring not at will, but they looked pretty dangerous early in the regular season, and also they scored enough on that road trip. But I thought their defensive play was at a higher level.
Right, I know the Red Wings had today off, and maybe they just needed it. But it was interesting. We've touched upon this against the record against the Western Conference, which is the best in the NHL, or for an Eastern Conference team, I guess I should say. And Thomas Tatar was interviewed, and on TV they tried to do why are you guys so good against the West? And Tatar said something that I found really interesting because. And you just touched upon it. After that 6-game road trip, which was out to the West Coast, where they came back and I think they got a point in every game except maybe the Kings game where they lost. They were like 4-1-1 in that road trip. Then with all the home games coming up in March, you're thinking, all right, this team's cruising. They could maybe even go for the President's Trophy. Tatar says, we really like these long road trips. We go out, we hang out, we're bonding, and we're doing all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, is it that easy? Is it these guys are pining for the Western Conference and these long road trips that they used to make? I mean, because at this point it has to be somewhat mental too. When it goes this long, we've covered athletes long enough to know either they're gripping the stick too tight or something's just not going around. It's like someone waves a magic wand over them, and there's no confidence. And could it be as simple though? Because I'm thinking to myself, because he was like longing for the long road trip, which we used to, over the years say, oh my gosh, they're starting at 10:30 again or 10 o'clock, but they seem to like it. Is it again? And I know this is a long, drawn out question, Kevin, but I'm trying to put a finger on it. Is it because they long for the West in a strange sense? And that they're familiar with that style of hockey, they're comfortable, and they're still in a position where they're not confident enough, even though this was a Western Conference team, they're just still getting used to. I know we touched upon it last time, but is it as simple as that? They long for the West, and they're still adjusting to the East, because this is unreal. Just when you think that they're at the point where they're really going to, ascend to the top, they're starting to descend not to the bottom, but to the middle of the pack, as you just pointed out.
Well, I mean, I think there's something to that. Especially the veteran Red Wings know Western Conference opponents better. It's like a pitcher or a hitter facing a pitcher numerous times. If he's in your division and you face him more often, you have a better idea of what they're going to throw to you. And the Red Wings know what the Kings are all about. They know what the Calgary Flames are all about. They know about the Blackhawks. They've played them so many times over the last 8 or 9 years. They've had fewer games against the Eastern Conference opponents. So I think there is something to the idea that they're still sorting out, what each of those individual players. They've seen all the moves of all the top players in the West, and they're still sort of sorting out. They've seen these players in the East, but they don't have as much history to them. But to me, like, that game last night certainly seemed like a lack of confidence game, and the best example of that is that didn't it feel, if you were watching that game, that with the Red Wings, every time they'd, obviously the Coyotes kept taking 1-goal leads, that once they got into overtime, it almost felt like the Red Wings sort of sensed that something bad was going to happen. Like, on that goal, when the guy broke in, it just felt like he was going to score. And I wonder if Jimmy Howard and felt exactly the same thing, that when they were on the West Coast trip, he makes that save.
Right.
But now that they're home and the team has some self-doubt for whatever reason, and this is what momentum is all about. And in covering hockey for as long as I have, it's almost inexplicable, when a team, especially with veteran professional players, suddenly loses its confidence. But it happens all the time, where teams are playing well and there's really no explanation. Then suddenly, they go in a slump and then they regain the momentum or their confidence. And all of a sudden, it almost like the Red Wings played in the West and they expected success and they got success. Now they're home and things have gone bad a little bit, and now it's almost as if they're expecting that something bad is going to happen, and it's become self-fulfilling. I mean, they're not playing like a confident team.
No, they certainly aren't. And the goal that Jimmy Howard let in overtime, I know Archibello, I believe is how the young man pronounces his name. This is the fourth team he's played on this year. The fourth team that he's played on this year. He looked like a world beater. David Moss, and hey, he's a local guy, so you sort of root for him. Attended University of Michigan. He hadn't scored in what seemed like forever. He gets 2 goals last night. Doubles his output for the season. It was just a strange game. Howard didn't look comfortable in net. It didn't look like he was being aggressive, coming out and challenging. His angle seemed a little bit off, which is disturbing, because what's disturbing about it is, as we very well know, perhaps the quickest way to get a team out of a slump is to have a hot goaltender who just stops everything. And right now, Red Wing fans are saying, that hot goaltender is not Jimmy Howard, it's Peter Mrazek. You better get his butt back in there. How much... Because we know that Mike Babcock usually has a short leash. Jakob Kindle hasn't played in how long, and you could arguably say, as once he got his sea legs last night, he could have been their best defenseman out there, which is, might be a bit of a stretch, but, they lost Cromwell. So I guess my point being is that, is Jimmy on some short leash when you look at this schedule coming up? Thursday, San Jose. Saturday, Tampa Bay. Sunday, on the road against the Islanders. And then that weekend, Tuesday, the 31st, Ottawa. The 2nd of April, Boston at home. And then they finish up with the Minnesota Wild in Minnesota. And then the next day, they're home at 5 o'clock. They're playing a 7 o'clock game in Minnesota on Saturday night. Less than 24 hours later, they're back on the ice facing the Washington Capitals, who have a lot to play for. I mean, this is pretty daunting. Isn't this the time? I know they all have to play better. I understand that. But isn't this the time that if Jimmy Howard wants to be considered that elite-level money goaltender, he better start doing it right now?
Well, I agree with that statement. I think it's tricky business, though. Obviously, when you're the coach of an NHL team dealing with your goaltenders, because I think everyone in Detroit expects that Howard is going to be the playoff goalie. That's just our assumption right now. You know, he's the guy. He's the guy earning the money. Mrazek's the guy still coming up. Howard has the experience. His playoff record is really not bad. You know, he's been decent at times during the postseason. But you know, the Red Wings have to start playing better, and I'm sure what Babcock will be wrestling with is the idea of, okay, I feel like I got to get Howard going again. On the other hand, what's the message to his team if you know if a defenseman, especially a younger defenseman, played as poorly as Howard did in that game? I think he'd be on the bench, you know, for sure. I think it's a little trickier with your goalie, but you know, the message would be, if Mrazek starts, is, hey, look, you know, we got to play our best players, and you know, I don't think Jimmy Howard, he's a veteran goalie. I'm not sure he needs to be told that he didn't play well. But you know, I think if you do that, you sort of send a notice to the team of, hey, we've got to get better. We have to get better than the way we're playing. So I think it would make some sense to play Mrazek, because I don't think it's you know, you could still come back with Howard in the next game, and then you know, you can see where you're at. If Howard plays poorly again and Mrazek plays well, then maybe you switch to Mrazek. If Mrazek plays well and then Howard plays well in the next game, well, then you can continue on, you know, with Howard. So I think it would be easy to make the switch right now if that's what he wants to do, and play Mrazek in the next game.
Right, now that would be against San Jose, and then coming up on Sunday or Saturday afternoon would be the Tampa Bay game. I mean, or do you try to let Jimmy play himself out? If he doesn't play well against San Jose, let's say, then if you're Babcock, you almost have to go to Mrazek then, don't you? Against
well, the
problem against.
The problem is, if you play Howard on Thursday, I mean, are you going to play Mrazek in back-to-back games? You know, I think, yeah, you know, so this way, if you go, you know, if you go with Mrazek on Thursday, to me, you're going to give him 2 of the next 3 games.
Right.
Because Howard is going to have to play one of those games on the weekend, I think. So you're going to give him a chance to play out of this. So, you know, I think there's an opportunity here for Babcock to play Mrazek and not cause any, you know, long-term damage in his relationship with Howard.
Are you surprised, or is it because these groin injuries, and you know, for a goalie, that's probably about the worst injury you can get, unless you know you break a finger or something, that it's taken him a while to get back to that level? Because at the start of this season, he did seem to be different as far as just confidence. He understood what happened last year. By his own admission, he said he didn't have a good year, and so now all of a sudden he's, I don't know how to put this, you know, he just, you know, he seems to be kind of at a loss for words himself about, you know, I know where I have to be. At times I think I'm there, and then at other times I have a game like I did against the Phoenix Coyotes of all teams. I mean, it's very, very odd. And I'm surprised. I mean, I knew it might take him a little bit because of the nature of as I said, the groin injury, maybe to get back to where he is, but I didn't think it would take this long. And again, is that because maybe he's not feeling 100%? I mean, you know, Kevin, now I'm asking you to be a doctor here, you know, I mean, is he not 100%, or he's kind of lost his confidence? The team hasn't played well. You know, they've given up a power play goal, I think, in now 8 or 9 straight games, whatever it is. You know, and last night the power play looked pretty good. I mean, they killed off a complete 5-on-3 for a full 2 minutes, and I think Phoenix during that whole time, and there was, you know, a 5-on-4 play before the 5-on-3 and 5-on-4 play after the 5-on-3. I think they gave up 2 shots total in that whole period. I mean, or that whole segment of time. I just can't figure it out, and I'm just trying to wonder if the longer this goes on, if Howard, who's a supremely confident individual and wants to win a cup in Detroit, I mean, he's extremely competitive. He's fiery. I mean, Jimmy's everything you want in a player. He really is. But do you think it's, you know, where's his confidence, I guess, is going to happen here, especially in this town where everybody now is rattling the sabers, shall we say, for Peter Mrazek?
Well, we really need his goaltending coach Jimmy Bedard on here to sort of dissect where Howard is at. But, you know, and again, my observation last night was when Howard is not playing well, like, you know, he was screened on, like, that long shot from Dahlbeck. There's no doubt about that. But when he's playing well, like, that puck leaked through him after it got through. Like, I'm sure he didn't see it. But when he's playing well, he senses where he needs to be, and he's closed off. You know, he's a wall. You know, so when he can't see it, the puck, because he's in the right position, the puck seems to hit him, and you know you can sense he's playing strong. You know,
that's exactly right. I mean, when he can't see the puck, it's just positioning too, right? I mean, that's part of it.
Right. Yeah, when you can't see the puck, he needs to be. You know, he needs to sense where he needs to be, and he needs to be closed up. You know, he needs to have no holes in his, you know, in the way he's set up, and that puck leaked through him. You know, it did. Like, and that's the way he's played since he's come back. He has not been a wall. Pucks are sort of squeezing through him, so getting in places, and on that, you know, like that goal, that winning goal. You know, that's not a goal that an NHL goalie should give up. You know, he should have been out challenging. You know, he's an aggressive goalie. He's not Mrazek. You know, Mrazek plays well out of the blue paint. You know, Howard's not like that, but he's aggressive, and he should have been out more on that. And, you know, he gave him way too much net to shoot at in that position. So, to me, that's a sign of a goalie that doesn't have this confidence. It seemed to me that, you know, and maybe not just Jimmy Howard, but it seemed like the Red Wings were expecting things to go bad because of the way that game had gone. You know, they had the puck. They had way more shot attempts than the Coyotes did, and yet they found themselves chasing the Coyotes all night long. And I think when they got into overtime and they couldn't win it in regulation, it just felt like they just thought something bad was going to happen, and it did.
Well, I think the key, you know, and I'm going off the top of my mind, I think the final stats for face-off Phoenix won like 41, 42 draws to Detroit's like 24, 25, or maybe 27, something like that. But any way you look at it, they were chasing the puck. You know, do you think, Kevin, and this is, Red Wings go into this game, they win a big game against St. Louis. You know, the whole town is excited. It was a tough game. The Blues came in here, physically challenged Detroit. They were up to the task. You know, Justin Abdicator's playing very, very well, played well again last night. That deep down, as much as it's the Phoenix Coyotes, they're coming in here. They haven't won in 8 games. You know, the Connor McDavid, they pretty much tore up their team to ensure that, you know, they're either going to get McDavid or Eichel or have a pretty good shot at it. That mentally, you know, they get a goal, but then you get a goal and you think, okay, well, we got the goal. They'll fold, and they didn't. And then they come back, and then you say, okay, well, we'll get it now. Okay, now we tied it up again. Well, now we're going to get, you know, I mean, it just seems like they go from being not having confidence to being somewhat overconfident, thinking, okay, everything's going to fall into place, almost like a fan gets. You know, you know, who didn't watch that game last night and thought to themselves, all right, it's 1-1. All right, here we go. All right, finally, you know, they're out shooting them. It's going to happen. And Phoenix just wouldn't go away. How much is that a testament to Phoenix, or how much is that a testament to the Red Wings being confident and overconfident at the same time? You know, and this is my point. They don't seem to be meshed all together. You know, there's certain guys that are on. You know, like I don't think Justin Abdicator can play any better. You know, he's all over the ice. Jakob Kindle's pass to Abdicator on that goal was incredible. You know, I think Zetterberg is playing pretty well too, but they're all a mishmash now. They're all jumbled all over. I mean, it's unreal. And I guess I'm trying to rationalize it in my head. How could you let this happen against the Phoenix Coyotes?
Well, you know, did they take them for granted? You know, we did that yesterday, you know, or 2 days ago when we did the podcast. I mean, I said anything less than 4 points was a disaster because, you know, you got to expect to beat these two teams. You know, I mean, right now you have two fan bases that are mad at the Red Wings. The Red Wings fan base because the team isn't playing well, but the Coyotes fan base was counting on that loss. I mean, they're in the McDavid-Eichel sweepstakes, and now that puts them 5 points ahead of the Sabres. Like, they have two big games coming up with the Sabres. If the Coyotes could have lost those games, and if the Red Wings would have done their job and defeated the Coyotes like they were supposed to, the Coyotes by the end of this week could have been the worst team in the league, and that would have given them the shot at Eichel. Which reminds me, there's a funny story. One of the bars in Buffalo is offering a special. You can buy a Connor McDavid drink, and it's both of them are vodka drinks. It's a different color. I think it's orange juice vodka, and then the Eichel is a cherry vodka. But the deal is that if you order the Connor McDavid vodka, you have an 80% chance of ending up with the Eichel drink. That's what they say. So I thought that was a great, that was a great drink special. So anyway, both fan bases are mad at the Red Wings this morning for laying the egg. But I think everybody thought that was going to be an easy game, and I think the one thing I laugh to myself when I hear fans say, well, the players are tanking. No, the players never have tanked. I've covered this league a long time. Players always try to win. Coaches always try to win. That's just the way it goes. I mean, do the Buffalo Sabres, did the management set them up to be a poor team? Yeah, they did. They're in rebuilding. They put together that team. But the players themselves and Coach Ted Nolan, they're giving it all they had. Just like last night, Tippett and his group just wouldn't. They don't care that the team wants to get, or management may want to get Connor McDavid. So I think the Red Wings assumed they were going to win that. Maybe took the Coyotes for granted. I think just most fans thought as soon as it was 1-1, okay, now these guys will fold, and they didn't. So you have to give the Coyotes some credit for the way they played. But the Red Wings roster now is so superior to the Coyotes roster that they should have won that game. It's never easy in the NHL. These are all pros, all NHL players, but they're a much better team than the Coyotes, and they certainly didn't play like that.
Kevin, I want to switch thing. You kind of touched on, and I think I'm just frustrated because I'm trying to figure out there has to be some sort of answer, but I'm pretty sure that today that the Red Wing players themselves, Mike Babcock, and the Red Wing coaching staff, Ken Holland, they're all trying to figure out how to stop this. I think that they're, it's weird because sometimes, I thought maybe last night might have been the game where Babcock or one of them just said, look, we got to end this. I can remember years ago, the Red Wings were a much better team back then, where Steve Yzerman said, look, it doesn't matter who we're playing. We just have to start winning, period. It doesn't matter if we're playing the best team in the league or the worst team in the league or whomever, we've got to just start winning. I thought that maybe we'd get one of those type of things like, look, this has just got to stop. I can sit here and tell you we're doing a lot of great things, and we are, but we're not winning games. Boom, let's change it. No one did that. They still stayed to the same kind of mantra, like, well, we're doing a lot of good things. We're doing a lot of good things, and and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, yeah, you're doing a lot of good things, but you don't look very good. There are aspects of your game that are good, or you're playing well, and then there aren't. And so, and I guess, that's why I'm almost venting and ranting here today. But I want to move on to something that you said. I was watching on NHL Network, the show that comes on at noon, the Hockey Central Talk show, and they were talking about why goal scoring is down. Why there might be a couple 50-goal scorers, but no one's going to get near 100 points maybe this year and win the scoring title. And they all said it's because the goaltenders today are giants. They're 6'6". As long as they play their position, because they're so large, they don't have to see the puck anymore. It just hits them. And that's why when you look at the Red Wings to a certain degree, and they didn't bring the Red Wings up, Howard's not Ben Bishop. Mrazek, as great as the Red Wing fans think he is, he's not Ben Bishop. The only Ben Bishop is that Jared Careau, who's like 6'6", who played, I believe, at Northern Michigan, who they signed as an unrestricted free agent. Do you think that's the problem, is that scoring is down because, they say the goaltending's better, but is it because the goaltending's better or the goaltending's bigger? And then do you look at the NHL trying to somehow tinker with the game? I know they've done things with goalie equipment. They've done things try to make the net bigger. I mean, how do you it's kind of like they talk about in basketball. 10 feet's just not tall enough. These guys are dunking. It's too easy for them. We got to put it up to 12 feet or something. I mean, where do you buy into that? Do you look at it, or is it a cyclical thing where, don't worry, the game has its way of leveling itself off. Goal scoring will come back.
No, it's not coming back. Not the way the things are configured. I think it's all of the above. I mean, the size of the goalies and the goaltending equipment has certainly had an impact. I remember when Mary Lemieux was in one of his last seasons, and I knew him pretty well, and I talked to him pretty regularly. I got to Pittsburgh a lot, and I asked him about the difference, and he said, well, the difference was when I first came in the league, he said, you'd go down, you'd be controlling the puck, you'd look up, you'd see an opening, usually in the upper corners, and you'd fire. And he said, most of us, just like baseball pitchers can throw within a 1 by 1 foot area. Most NHL scorers, can get that puck in the upper corner. They see an opening, they can get it in that. They can get it through a mail slot, pretty much. But he said late in my career, I look up and I just see goalie equipment. They just took up the whole net. And I think that got in the shooters' heads as it does today, where they need to see something to shoot at, and it's just not there. I think that's been one of the issues, the size of the equipment, and I think it's gone beyond the scope of protecting the goalie and into becoming part of the saving apparatus. Like the goaltending equipment is originally it was designed to take all the bruising away from the goalies that they used to endure, and now it's become make myself as big as possible to stop the puck. And then the goalies have all gotten bigger. I mean, there's so many goalies now that are 6'5" or taller, and Anders Lindback is not considered a top NHL goalie, but the other night he made 40-some saves. Well, he's 6'7". He takes up the net. But in this year's thing, the other element to the lack of scoring, like 5-on-5 scoring, is pretty much where it's been for the last 2 years. Where it's down is the number of power play goals, and power play chances are down significantly. Either players have figured out the new way of calling the game, or officials aren't calling as many penalties. And so there are fewer power play opportunities, and it's easier to score in the power play, as we all know. And that's the reason why goal scoring is down this season. So it's a variety of factors. There was only one 100-point scorer last year, and that was Sidney Crosby, and he won the scoring title by 17 points. I think Getzlaf had 87 points, and he was second last season. And this year, we're not going to get a 100-point scorer. In fact, we have a bunch of guys kind of lumped together. So I think it's multiple factors. But the one suggestion to me that I've heard that would make some sense is we have to raise, because of the height of the goalies. We don't need to make the goals wider. We just need to make them taller. I think we need to give that shooter 3 or 4 more inches to shoot for. That in the olden days, the goalie, when he reached up, he couldn't cover that whole net. Mm-hmm. And now, because he's bigger, he can't. So I think we need to sort of make it a stretch for him, literally, to get up there and take away that corner if he's on his knees.
Do you think that will happen? I mean, will that be discussed? Is that one of these rule changes that you don't have to go through the governor's committee and then send it to the players? I mean, will everybody be on board of that? And unfortunately, goalies don't have their own separate union, which gets me, because they might not be. You talk to a goalie and they say, look, these guys talk about our equipment, all this. They've got these sticks that they fire off a puck with the torque and all that. It's like a rocket. It's like a rocket being launched into space. Yet they want to get down on us, but. Something, again, as simple as just raising the net, the height of the net. Has it been talked about? Do you think it'll be talked about, or will they let this thing play out? Because this is the first, every time you open up your mouth, Kevin, you always kind of spur something in me. This seems to be the first year that I can remember, maybe last year too, where there hasn't been an edict from the league to crack down on a certain aspect of the game. Meaning that, for that weekend, they'll have like 55 penalties of clutching and grabbing, and then as the days progress, suddenly there's no more calls on clutching and grabbing, which kind of, obviously skew the number up, and they have a little more power play. So, I guess what I'm saying is that, number one, making the net taller, will that happen? And number two, do you think that because there's no edict this year, they're just kind of letting everything kind of come as it goes, and as people are playing, that's why power plays are down?
Yeah, Yeah, it is. It has been at times this league like writing tickets in municipalities at the end of the month. You got a quota. You got to do it. Send out the memo, and then things change for a while. But yeah, I mean, and the other element too, and I didn't bring up, but shot blocking has changed the game dramatically. I mean, they're bunkered down now. You're trying to fire a puck. Through five guys who are, just all set up around the net. It's hard to get the puck through, harder than it has been in the past. Well, the key to getting a rule passed is get Ken Holland to champion the cause. So maybe that's what we need to do. I do know Kenny Holland is aware of the idea of raising the net. I actually had a conversation with him about it not so long ago. He is not. Formally endorsed that. It hasn't really been talked about, but I think it's an idea whose time has come. I think there are some GMs who have discussed it privately. I think everybody's sort of aware that option is out there, and it's like anything else. I think everyone's always afraid of change, but once it happens, everybody adjusts. And to be honest, I remember the story I was told in the summer when Brendan Shanahan was in his position as head of the player safety. They've experimented with some possible rule changes in the summer with prospects. And one year they had a change in the size of the net. And Doug Riseborough had come in to look at what was going on, and he was standing alongside the glass, and he asked one of the NHL officials, well, when are we going to use those enlarged nets? And the guy turned to him and said, they're out there now. And you just didn't notice them. And the point is then when the play is moving on, sometimes you after a while it just looks like it normally does. So I think the same would be true. I mean, you don't want to make them soccer size or anything like that, but if you enlarge the net a little bit, I don't think it would have quite the dramatic impact that people believe it would.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple of hockey sages, shall we say, and they were telling me that the trapezoid should go away. That everyone thought that would increase offensive chances, but really what it's done is that it's taken away from a goaltender who could probably, because of his passing ability, and I think Red Wing fans see it with Mrazek, that could actually go back there, play it, and maybe get an offensive or an odd man rush going. There's a line change or not. Do you see that happening? Do you think the trapezoid has done exactly what the league had hoped that it would do?
Well, we always talk about the butterfly effect. Where you change one thing and then other things occur. The trapezoid, what it really did was make defensemen vulnerable to injury because they're back there trying to play the puck. Meanwhile, you don't allow the defensemen to hold up the forwards as they're charging in. So these forechecking forwards are hitting these defensemen at 100 miles an hour, causing shoulder injuries.
Right.
And you hear that all the time. With you got to be so careful with rule changes because they have unintended consequences. So it's been talked about a lot, the trapezoid, and just like the 3-on-3, I think there's a few more general managers that now are in favor of going back to the old way, but probably not enough. But give it another year or two, and we could see an end to that too. I think that's possible as well because there's a growing sentiment that really hasn't done what they thought it was, and some of the GMs that I've talked to who are opposed to it said, that was a skill that Marty Brodeur had, and why are we punishing him for being a skilled goalie?
Right.
He can play the goal, he can play that puck back there, and it was an advantage for him. It's almost like, they got rid of, they wanted to diminish the impact that the Oilers had on, getting players off the ice so they could play 3-on-3 hockey where they had an advantage, and so they had the Edmonton Oilers rule. We've called the trapezoid the Marty Brodeur rule because he was able to utilize that. So I would see that happening, but not this season or next.
Well, guys who still like the trapezoid have told me that if you look at it though, that's why the icing rules changed. The trapezoid brought that in essentially because that's where a lot of guys would get hurt. The defenseman would be racing for the puck, or the goalie can't touch it. They would have to get there first, and lo and behold, a guy gets mangled up against the glass. So we'll see, though. I mean, the one thing about hockey, which I do love, is that they're not afraid to tinker with their game to make it better. You know, they'll try some, and if it's working, fine. If not, they'll modify it somehow.
Well, but you say that, but you know, I think they've been resistant to change. They'll tinker, but in our lifetime, Art, we've seen far more dramatic changes than all the other sports than we see in hockey. We're essentially in hockey playing the same game we played 70 years ago. You know, I mean, no, not 70 years ago, but certainly in the 1950s. But, you know, in our lifetime, we've seen the introduction of three-point shot in basketball. We've seen the mound lowered, the designated hitter in baseball. We've seen the goalpost moved in football. We've seen it's now flag football for the quarterback. We've seen that, you can't touch the wide receiver now. We've dramatically changed those other sports. And in hockey, we're still playing on the same size rink. We're still, sort of with the same size net. We've added the shootout, but we've modified that a little bit. I mean, I just don't think we've had the same level of change in hockey as we've had in the other sports. I think those games have been dramatically changed by the rule changes. I think the rule changes in the NHL have just sort of tinkered a little bit on the outside edges.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you, Kevin. I mean, I just think that they at least talk about things. Maybe that's what I'm saying
yeah.
now. There's always a lot of discussion, at least.
Absolutely, and they do change, little things. I mean, I think the point I do agree with is they're always trying to make it better, but it's hard because you have 30 GMs, and I'm always amazed at this. There's 30 guys who all make their livings in the game. They all love the game. They're passionate about the game. But when you get them in a room, they rarely agree on what would improve the game. And not only that, but then their team situations, have to dictate how their views. So the Red Wings are never going to favor a shootout because they haven't been any good at it. But I don't think that's the sole reason why Kenny Holland put up 3-on-3. He just thinks it's not a good way to, shootouts are not a good way to end a hockey game. But it's just hard to get a group of 30 people to agree on these rule changes.
Well, yeah, I don't want to. I'm joking around here, but I don't know how with the size, and they're not small men by any chance, Mrazek or Howard. Why you want to make the net higher unless he somehow figures out a way that they can go on some sort of growth spurt themselves, and suddenly be from 6 feet down to at least 6'3" or 4. But let's get back to the Wings here. We're joking around that Datsuk eventually is going to come back. Darren Helm has come back. He's playing with an edge, with a grit. I know he delivered a baby yesterday. I mean, everything that Helm's really riding a real hot streak. Abdicator's playing well. Nyquist, who is not. Even though he hasn't been scoring quite as much, and I know we touched upon this, he and Tatar, they always seem to be in position, so I'm not really worried about them, but then do they have to sit in a room before tomorrow's game when it's just the guys and they're drinking their coffee and talking over some strategy, and Babcock addresses them for a second and you have all the line combinations of San Jose on the board? Do they just sit there and say to themselves, okay, we've got to play better 5-on-5 defense. We have to play collectively, no matter which 5 of us are out there, we have to be better defensively. And where does that start? Obviously, having Nicholas Cromwell back would help. Or do you think if this continues this way that Zidlicky's going nowhere? We know that. But do you try to bring up, Marchenko, who was steady as a defender, who played very, very well? Do you start tinkering with that? But is that too late in the season? It's like, we're the 20 guys that are dressing in the room right now, and we got to figure this out.
Well, I think you got to stick with the guys that you've been with. But Marchenko was part of that group, and I think he will be part of the equation, in the playoffs as the guy they move in. This is what you often hear in the playoffs is we have to keep it simple. The KISS, I think that's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear Zetterberg say, look, let's get the puck out of our zone. Let's start there. Let's get it out of our zone, and let's get it out effectively and efficiently. And if we do that, if that's our primary mission, is when the puck is in our zone, we get it out, then we're going to have success. Because once we get it out, we have the ability up front and the speed to turn that into scoring chances. And that's how they played early in the season, where it wasn't complex. Right now the Pittsburgh Penguins are still dealing with Johnston's changes to their system and how they retrieve the puck. The Red Wings, all they need to do is just to get it out of their zone. It doesn't need to be more complex than that, and then let their offense take over from there. That's what I would do, is say, look, that's our mission. Let's think about that. Not what we're looking to create an offense with our first pass out of the zone. Let's just get the puck out of the zone, knowing that the boys up front will know what to do once we get it out of our zone.
Are you a bit surprised that Mike Babcock has been relatively calm during this? Because, at times he has not been shy about speaking his mind, or on occasion maybe throwing a player under the bus. Now, of course, every time he says, well, the puck went in the net tonight, he's definitely taken a shot at his goaltender. And he's done that a few times. But, but for the most part, he's stayed even keel. And, granted, he is, and he tells it like it is, but, and I know it's kind of, I brought this up a little bit earlier in our show today, but I'm just thinking that he seems to be a little bit too calm. Is that because he's reserved to the fact is that, hey, how this is going to play out is how it's going to play out. I don't have any magic elixir here in my back pocket to tell these guys what they need to do.
Well, that's true. I think he's a little bit frustrated because I think he believes there have been some nights when they've played pretty well and still not got the result. We never give the opposition enough credit for what's happening in the like this whole podcast. We have not once talked about how well. Well, that's not true. You actually talked about how the Coyotes were giving it all they had, but for the most part, we ignore the other team. It's not what the other team is doing to the Red Wings. It's what the Red Wings are doing to themselves. They're not playing well. I'm talking about they're not getting the puck out, but the reason they're not getting the puck out is because the forecheckers are doing pretty well. And maybe he has the sense that the opposition has played well, against them, and they just need to find a way to get the other teams off their game. And maybe he is happy with the way that Nyquist and Tatar are playing and the energy level they bring to the game, and he just figures that they've had poor puck luck, and it's going to all come together, for him. So, but what I saw from Scotty Bowman in the years I covered him is he evolved as a coach. He was a different guy in the 1970s than he was at the end of his career, and I think maybe Babcock is evolving as well. That maybe he feels, where he was a confrontational coach earlier in his career, maybe he's saying, look, this team doesn't need me yelling at them. They know when they play well and when they don't, and maybe I need to be supportive in this at this time. Like look at the difference between a Ken Hitchcock in St. Louis and a Cooper in Tampa Bay. Like the players in Tampa, I just spent some time down there, they love playing for Cooper. Like he is a player's coach. He's a positive guy. He's a fun guy. He comes in, he tells them when they're not playing well, but he doesn't make his players defensive. They don't feel like they're failures, and they like playing for him. Now he's had good success. He hasn't won a cup. He's had success. Compare that to Hitchcock, who's very like a tyrant. And who knows? Maybe Babcock has decided, hey, I need to be just a little more upbeat in my approach. I mean, I don't really know this, but I'm just sort of speculating. And I think everybody evolves in their profession, and maybe Mike is evolving in his.
Well, I mean, we have touched upon that. It's really interesting things that we touch upon, and I know a lot of people are watching this because all of a sudden now the big story is, will Dylan Larkin jump? Maybe everybody now is talking about that. We've been talking about that for quite a while. So let me then ask you this. How concerned are you, because I jokingly said this, but there was some truth behind what I said earlier today, that, the playoffs are almost here, Pavel Datsyuk has to be hurt. I mean, how concerned are you? Because, again, because he has a high tolerance for pain, I can't even tell you when he got hurt. I have no idea. The Red Wings obviously aren't going to share that. But regardless, whatever the timeline has been, and we thought that he was going to be back, last night against Arizona. Now everyone's looking forward against San Jose. Maybe they say, well, he still could use a couple of days. we really need him against Tampa Bay and the Islanders in these back-to-back games, or could he even play back-to-back games? I mean, I just don't know what to think anymore when it comes to Pavel Datsyuk, because obviously on the power play, there were points in that game last night where they could have used Pavel Datsyuk, obviously. I mean, I'm the master of the overstatement here, or the Captain Obvious, but boy, I mean, I don't know what it is. Is it age or what, or just bad luck? But, they need him now, and for whatever reason, it seems like the last several years, and I know I'm exaggerating here, he's just not ready to go.
Yeah, no, well, as you get older, it's harder to stay healthy in this league, but, the absence of Pavel Datsyuk can't be used as, a crutch for why they've performed this way, because, he's an important part of the Red Wings, but he's not the sole reason why, they were successful earlier in the the season. So, but they need him. There's no doubt about it, and I think they'll err on the side of caution going down the stretch, hoping they got enough to hold on to the playoff spot and then have him as healthy as possible in the postseason, because there's two levels here. Hey, you do want to get in the playoffs, and I still think that they're not totally safe, but I think they'll get in. But you want them. I mean, no one. If you're a Red Wing fan, you don't want them to have one and out. You want them to have an opportunity to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I think they need Pavel Datsyuk playing well. They're not going to beat the Lightning unless Datsyuk has a good playoff series. I think that's true. And the one final thing I want to bring up about Larkin, I didn't bring this up the other day when I was talking about the comparison to Jonathan Toews. That's who I think he reminds me of. Just the way he plays and his leadership and all that. Well, I'd like to point out that Toews did play 2 years. I mentioned that he played college hockey in North Dakota.
North Dakota, right?
Yeah, but he played 2 seasons. So if I'm going to follow through on that Toews comparison, I would have to say it certainly wouldn't hurt Larkin to and just like Larkin, Toews was a dominant player at the World Junior Championships, and helped. In fact, there's a lovely video on YouTube where Toews talking on live television in Canada, and everybody in Canada watches the World Juniors. And when he was talking about winning the championship, lets out a very interesting cuss word as he's on live television celebrating the championship, of which his mother admonished him later on. He said. So.
Well, I find what I find funny about that is that Jonathan Toews is kind of like robotic at times. I can't even believe that he knows any swear words. He's in the locker room enough. Larkin is interesting. What I really think is Red Berenson has been pretty open and honest about this. He says, well, this is something that I don't think he knows where he is right now. I know I read a story, I don't know if it was NBC Sports or something earlier today, but this is a decision that he's going to have to make. Usually, Red says they should stay 4 years, basically.
Right, yeah.
But he knows that this kid's special. I mean, he knows that. But if Larkin stays next year, he has to be one of the odds-on favorite to win the Hobey Baker, I would assume.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. But Red knows. He played in the NHL. He knows what's up, and I'm sure he's saying to himself, that this is a legitimate decision for Larkin. Again, I don't think he's absolutely ready to play, because I think this is the greatest league in the world, the NHL, and he's only proven himself at the college ranks, and it is still a big jump to the NHL. But there are players who are Larkin's age who have stepped in the NHL, and it's like learning on the job. It's like an apprenticeship. It's not unthinkable that he could step in and be a fourth liner and give the team a little spark. Who knows? You just don't know unless he's there. But I would not think, and nobody thinks, that Larkin is going to step in and suddenly be among the Red Wings' leading scorers. That's just not in the cards. There will be a learning curve, but everyone does expect that at some point he's going to be a top player on the Red Wings.
Yeah, I would look at it this way, and maybe it's wishful thinking, because not only do I want what's best for the Red Wings, being a lifelong Red Wing fan, although I think we're pretty objective here on the Red and White Authority, as we should be. and I'm also big Michigan fan as well. But I think if he stays next year, he's the leader of that Michigan team. The growth, the emotional growth that he'll go through, playing another year of college hockey. Because I think we all said, when Red says it's a decision he's going to have to make, we all know the talent's there or the potential's there. Let's put it that way. But now that he takes the Wolverines next year without Zach Hyman there, maybe Michigan's goaltending finally comes through for them. It's been a number of years that he will grow in a different way that maybe he wouldn't grow if he were in Grand Rapids, because it's professional as opposed to college where it's still a little more pure, I guess I'm going to say. A little more, he's in school, he's around kids his own age, he's got a lot more things going on campus than he would be if he's in Grand Rapids playing a professional schedule.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that the Red Wings system is about going to Grand Rapids and learning the ropes a little bit. I think Larkin is special enough that if he goes one more year to college, he'll step right in and go directly from college to the NHL. That would just be my guess. Where I think the Red Wings, if he signed now, would try to get him into Grand Rapids and get him some games. And would they have him as maybe a secret weapon, for the playoffs? Well, I don't think they have expectations of that being the case. But we've all seen instances in the NHL when a guy comes out of nowhere and ends up playing a factor just because. He's a new player and he's playing on adrenaline, enthusiasm, and so forth. So, who knows what's going to happen? But the only thing I know for sure is that Larkin, at some point, as I said, is going to be a top player on the Red Wings. I mean, this is a highly skilled prospect. This is not a 15th pick where he landed. This is like getting a guy who should have been in the top 5.
Right. Well, and what's interesting too is no disrespect or lack of respect towards Anthony Mantha, but he's going to be able to develop at his own pace because everyone's Larkin crazy now. I think a lot of that has to do with he's a local kid. He's playing for Michigan, and so people are more well aware, and people try to tend to root for their own, and he's certainly somebody from Southeast Michigan whom they could play for the Red Wings. I mean, even though Justin Abdicator's from the west side of the state, I think people love to see him do well because he's from here. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, Kevin, let's look at it. I'm just going to give you the gauntlet one more time, and I'm going to ask you to put on your soothsayer cap there. San Jose, Tampa Bay, the Islanders. I won't even get into next week because we'll have another show before then, obviously. We might have 2 shows before then, before Ottawa on the 31st and then Boston, both home games next week for the Red Wings on Tuesday and Thursday of next week. What do they need to do? Will they do it? And how many points are they going to get?
Well, I would say out of San Jose, Tampa, and the Islanders, they really need 4 points. 4 out of that 6. And I think they'll get them. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to beat San Jose because I think they all understand what an egg they laid against the Arizona Coyotes. And I think they'll play well against San Jose, and I think they'll play well enough to beat either Tampa Bay. And I'm going to guess it's going to be Tampa Bay. They don't want to go into the playoffs, never have beaten Tampa Bay. I think they're going to put in their best effort against Tampa Bay. And I think they'll win that game, and then I think it's going to be hard to beat 2 great teams on back-to-back days. So, they can end up losing the game against the Islanders.
All right, Kevin, we're almost done here. Who steps up? Who needs to step up? I mean, obviously we can say Jimmy. I think Jimmy knows he has to play better, but is there, is it as easy as to say, hey, Cromwell needs to come back? If Cromwell comes back, suddenly they're better defensively. They're a little more settled on the blue line because, yesterday, Brendan Smith, Erickson, for me, I don't know what's going on with Johnny. He just doesn't seem to be the same player he once was. And how do they right the ship?
Well, they right it with the guys you just mentioned. I think those guys have to play the safe, simple game that they played at the beginning of the season. I think it's really that simple. They've got to get the puck out of their zone. they've got to recommit to just not taking the chances. I mean, some of the when you're talking about Erickson, I mean, what we've all noticed is he's suddenly taking chances. He's darting 8 to 10 feet into the offensive zone to try to claim a puck, and then suddenly it goes the other way. And we've seen Brendan Smith take more chances. At the beginning of the season, he was playing a little more conservatively, and I think you need that defensive group to play well. And then I think when the Red Wings are playing well, they're getting breakaways by Darren Helm and Clendening and Tatar or Nyquist, and they've got to get some sizzle up front as well. I think the guys are working hard, but they got to find a way to get loose, to find the seams and get in those seams.
One final question. I've been asked this by many to ask you, because we talk about Mike Babcock and his future. If somehow, look, I think they're going to still somehow manage to get better, and I think they're going to finish third, and they're going to end up playing Tampa or Montreal, because they're kind of neck and neck themselves right now in the playoffs. I don't see them losing or relinquishing this lead. But if they pull a Toronto Maple Leafs and just pull the chute, shall we say, and they don't make the playoffs, and Boston and Ottawa do, does that affect Mike Babcock's place in the marketplace?
Yeah, that's great. No, it doesn't. I think everybody understands, that Babcock is a quality coach, a high-level coach, a difference-making coach. He's proven that in international hockey. He's proven that with the Red Wings. Like a lot of people around the league, the power brokers, they saw what he did last season with the JV Red Wings, getting them in the playoffs is one of his greatest accomplishments. That he had that team playing at a high level when it really shouldn't have. We've seen what injuries have done to the Columbus Blue Jackets this season, and yet the Red Wings had that level of injuries last season, and they still made the playoffs.
Right.
And I think a lot of people thought that was one of Babcock's finest accomplishments, the fact he was able to get last season's team. So if they don't get in, I think people around the NHL in the know will blame that on the players and not on Babcock.
Well, they always say the old expression, the first day of your, today's the first day of your life, or for the rest of your life. I mean, Thursday is the first day of the rest of the season for the Red Wings, and they better turn it around. Kevin, I'm not sure what your schedule's like. I maybe depending on what they do Thursday, maybe we should talk on Friday as well.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Because these are big games. So let's talk Friday. My schedule will be fine on Friday.
All right, Kevin. Your insight is you calm me down, Kevin, which is good because somebody has to. I end up thinking way too much about this stuff and trying to figure out that I know I don't have all the answers, but certainly you're a man that is level-headed enough where you may not have all the answers, but you have an explanation for what's going on, which is half the battle in itself. Thanks, Kev. We'll talk to everyone on Friday. This is the Red and White Authority. This was episode number 8. For Kevin Allen, I'm Art Regner. Until we meet again on Friday, have a safe and pleasant one, everyone. We'll see you. Take care. So long.